8 hours the next day returning every single one of those rugs because I couldn't afford them. Charge what you think you actually deserve. And then if it's too much for someone, they'll step away or maybe they'll negotiate. I remember once I went to Coachella, like big outfits, get all dressed up. And he just sent one DM that said, "Have my babies."
Welcome to Havers, the show where we sit down with people who have it all, whatever that means. Money, clout, hoes, and hear the stories behind how they got it all. I'm your host Christian, lead vocalist of the Chopstick Murphys, and today I'm talking to Bekah Barr, founder of And Cheers, a mixology and events company, owner of the acclaimed French restaurant Colette Wine Bistro in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and certified baddie. Looking at her life now, Bekah is a full-on entrepreneur, but before she started her first events company, which she did at one of the worst times in history to start an events company right before COVID, Bekah was a hot middle school teacher. So I asked her, what made you want to leave a stable career like teaching to pursue something crazy like an events company?
I think teaching every day is kind of crazy. And I taught middle school. So middle schoolers are like chaotic children. You never know what a middle schooler needs that day. If it's like a hug or they're going to throw a chair at you. Both
Has that happened to you?
Yeah, by the same kid. Like on the same day.
Maybe he just loved you too much.
Maybe. My favorite student actually he had like his homework all done in his hand and I went around to collect it. And he just opened the window and just threw it out the window. It's like a fuck you, Miss Barr. But anyway, so I loved all that energy. And my favorite day of the school year was field trip day. Because a lot of teachers actually don't like field trips because there's less structure. It can be very chaotic. Kids are running around. There's a lot of screaming. And that was always my favorite. So I realized I need to find a way to like take my love for all that energy and like showing people things and teaching and put it in a place where I'm not being told what to do every single day by a principal, by a district.
This is a theme we hear from a lot of guests on the show. Even though Bekah loved education, it was the lack of freedom, the fact that she had to report to a boss at the end of the day that pushed her to start her first events company in 2020.
So even while I was teaching, I was working as a server, bartender. Working while I was in college. And so I had like $25,000 in savings, which is a lot for a teacher. And I decided to start an events company. So I threw this amazing Moroccan themed launch party in the bijou room. Like there were rugs, rented fabric everywhere, like past appetizers. I had belly dancers.
Damn.
I was like, it was wicked fun.
Yeah.
And I lost like $30,000.
On the launch party?
Yeah. The bar kept my driver's license because I couldn't pay the bar tab.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a low moment. It was a lot of tears, but it was a really great party.
Yeah. How'd that feel then after, I guess the day after? Did you feel like that was a success? Were you like, I shouldn't have spent $30,000?
So I mentioned I covered the room in all those rugs for the Moroccan party. I told everyone to take off their shoes. I knew they would be kept in like immaculate condition. Yeah. I rolled them all back up. I rented a moving van and I spent 8 hours the next day returning every single one of those rugs because I couldn't afford them. Yeah.
The old 90-day return policy.
Yep. And then a couple weeks later, COVID hit.
Wow.
So I was sitting in my apartment in Brighton, like 3 roommates, the very typical Brighton apartment. And I was so in debt that my parents were like sending me money to buy groceries, even though I still had my day job. And I was like, okay, I got to pivot. I wanted to do an events company. I need to find a way to still make events happen, even though everyone's at home in quarantine. So I remember looking at like the governor's plan for back to normalcy, and stage 4 was when bartenders would go back to work, when bars would open. And I realized everyone is at home, right? This is like March and April. And what are we all doing? We're watching Netflix shows and movies and we're drinking. So I decided to kind of put all of those pieces together, and I immediately applied for and got a job working for GoPuff because they were getting fast-tracked to have their cars licensed to deliver alcohol in the state of Massachusetts. And I started reaching out to bartenders who I'd known and asked them, hey, would you design a themed cocktail based on this Netflix show or that Netflix movie? And I had a friend who'd been fired, COVID, a lot of layoffs. So luckily her background was in marketing, and she helped me put together this entire concept and logo and, the templates for these half sheets that would go in every single cocktail kit that told you information about the bartender who'd created your cocktail kit, where their inspiration came from, their Venmo if you wanted to send them a tip. And I would just drive around Massachusetts and deliver these themed cocktail kits based on Bridgerton and Ozark and Tiger King. So it was a really fun and exciting endeavor, and I had no idea what I was doing.
What were some of the challenges that you faced early on, if you remember any?
I think I still didn't understand how to run a business in terms of like cost and sales and understanding even how much to charge people, because I might be a cheap person in some context. So I would undersell myself all the time. Like, it really wasn't until an entire year later that someone told me, charge what you think you actually deserve. And then if it's too much for someone, they'll step away. Or maybe they'll negotiate, but charge more than what you think, because that's probably what you should be charging.
Okay. And what were you charging in the early days? And then what did you end up?
Oh, like $40 for a cocktail kit. And it would make like 8 servings.
Oh, damn. Yeah.
Like, I was making $10 a box, which is nothing, because I was driving around to like deliver all these and think about the time that I was putting in to like put them together to source all materials. So I was not making money.
You were basically making money, but losing a ton of time.
Exactly. Right. Because I didn't see my time as valuable.
Yeah.
And that's something that took a long time for me to learn, but is really one of the best lessons that I learned early on. Was I need to say, okay, if I was just working, how much would I want to make per hour? And so I set that number, and then I had to find a way to make sure that every hour of work I put into my business, I had that output of at least, I just used $50, like $50, $50, $50. And that really helped me price my product better.
If your days at this point in your life, I'm imagining, are like, are you still working a day job now too?
Yeah, like on the computer at home.
Yeah, so remote job during the day, you're grinding, doing this business. What's your wake up time? What time do you go to sleep? And what happens in between?
Wake up probably 8 a.m., work for the day job until like 2 or 3. And then I would either go and work for GoPuff for like 5 or 6 hours, get a shift done. Or I would be packing up cocktail kit boxes like in the living room of this apartment and loading them onto my car, and then driving around in the evening from like 3 to 6. So they call it happy hour.
How long did it take you to pay off that debt from the party?
I paid off all of that debt, which was a little bit more than 35.
Yeah.
You kind of add up everything and all the credit card fees, etc. in February 2022. Yeah. I have no debt. Yeah. Well, until I bought this restaurant. Yeah. But I had no debt until I bought this restaurant for a year and a half.
If you remember the lockdown days, you remember it could be really lonely, which is why so many people got addicted to TikTok, the bane of Western civilization. So I asked Bekah, while you were grinding day in and day out, did you ever feel lonely as a hot single white woman in a major city?
I mean, I definitely didn't have time to really date when I'd started the business. There were a few casual things here and there that I kind of revisited in COVID, more out of boredom than anything, because I can't fill my time every single day of the week with work. I'd always felt like I had a phobia of commitment, actually. So I don't have any tattoos. And part of it is because my grandmother told me that every pin prick is a hole for the devil to enter your body.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that was like 8-year-old Bekah being like, oh, I don't want the devil in me. Oh my God.
Yeah, that's very poetic, honestly. At this point, I'm getting like gangbanged by the devil.
But I couldn't commit to a long-term relationship with the devil or with anyone else. Yeah. I just don't think that I was really, truly looking for it. I think parts of me always like wants to be loved. Like, who doesn't want to be loved? But they say that men can have love whenever they want and women can have sex whenever they want. I think that's so true.
Wait, can you explain that? I kind of get the women can have sex whenever they want, but like, can you explain the men part?
I think so many women are seeking love that if a man wanted to just put in a little bit of effort or like reciprocate in some way or kind of open just 2 or 3 emotional but physical doors, honestly, he could receive love from a woman.
Yeah, actually, that might be true. You're not single anymore, right?
No. I have a great boyfriend, Jesse.
Well, cheers to Jesse.
Yeah.
So tell us about how you met Jesse, though. So
I was waitressing while I was teaching, surprise, in Boston.
Before or after time frame wise?
I'm 22. This is way before COVID.
Okay.
This is, how old would I have been? I would have been 20. So it would have been 2017, maybe. And I worked at Jillian's Lucky Strike and Cheeky Monkey and Fenway.
Oh, yeah. All the classic Caucasian spots.
Yeah. A lot of Caucasians. It could get rowdy too. So I was used to being hit on by like bachelor groups or like groups of guys but anyways, long story short, I was waitressing at Cheeky Monkey and I walked up to this table of this group of guys. There's 4 guys and one of them is just like hat down low, grumpy, did not want to be there. Yeah. And I remember as I'm like stepping towards this table, there's something there. Like
with the depressed guy?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I was like,
you're like, oh, if you don't want to be here, you're my type of guy.
Maybe. Yeah. Maybe I was like secretly like drawn to the cynic because I'm so like positive. But that was Jesse. And at the very end, he and his friends are like leaving and I bring the check over to the table and he's not there. And one of his friends is like, hey, can I have your phone number? And I was like, oh, that's weird because I wrote it down for Jesse and I put the bill right on his seat.
Oh, yeah.
And then I walked away. And so we didn't see each other, but he did text me and we decided not to meet up. I was like, I'm working a crazy weekend. He was like leaving, going back to North Carolina where he's from. So we didn't see each other for 6 years, but he would slide into the DMs. I remember once I went to Coachella, you know, like big outfits, you get all dressed up. And he just sent one DM that said, have my babies.
Wow.
And I remember being at Coachella, like pretty drunk. And I was like, fuck. I like dropped my phone in the dirt. I was like, damn. Like I had to sit down and take some deep breaths.
Yeah.
And I was dating someone at the time. So I just like double tapped, like gave it a little heart. And then like, he was really good. He never like overstood boundaries or anything, but it was just like those little, you know, confidence boosters. But June of 2023, he messages me and he said, hey, I'm coming into Boston for a Red Sox game. Do you want to go with me? And mind you, he'd asked me every single year because every single year he was coming up to Boston to go see a Red Sox game. But I was always busy or I was dating someone or I was living somewhere else. And so it never worked out. But he asked me and I said, I would love to go to a Red Sox game with him, but I have to go to a funeral first. So I went to a funeral after we went on our first date. We went to get brunch and I remember just smiling all through the funeral. So I was like, I had such a great time at brunch. We went to the game and it was great. It's been history since.
What a story. While businesses can be intentionally built and worked towards, love is often something that just comes out of being in the right place at the right time under the right circumstances. Our extremely single producer, Andy, was inspired.
So should I go look depressed at the bar?
Go look depressed at a bar.
All right, I'm taking notes. go depressed at the bar, then DM have my babies.
You have to like wait 3 years and then just like
3
you got
years?
a time. Yeah, set a 3-year timer on your phone.
He's quite short term. Well, you've been practicing edging, right?
No, I'm always anti.
You'll get him one day, Andy. Anyway, Bekah and Jesse finally got together, and I'm sure he's hot too, but as she mentioned, he lives all the way down south. And long distance is always a bad idea, except in some cases.
And he's been a long distance since then, right?
Yeah, but he's moving up here July 1st.
Okay, good. But how's that been juggling a relationship and multiple businesses?
I've been really grateful that it's been long distance, because I need so much time to work. I don't even there's no point in me trying to count hours or try to figure out what is each hour worth, because it's inconsequential at this point. I'm just trying to stay above water. So it's really great, honestly, that Jesse is far away, because otherwise I would feel, like I'd want to spend so much time with him. I want to do things together. I want to do this or that. And then now that he's not here, I don't have that pressure. I can just focus and work really, really hard until he is here. And then I have I've saved a little bit of breathing room so that we can go to a Red Sox game together, or we can, hang out together, make dinner together.
And now with the stability of a long-term, albeit long-distance relationship, Bekah started thinking about expanding her business with her first brick-and-mortar location.
So November 2022, I was like, I want to quit my day job. I need to find something full-time, but I'm not going to quit my day job until I find something. So I started looking, and originally I just wanted a space to be able to host mixology classes, something small, low rent, just in case, things didn't pan out. I learned to keep my costs low, right? So I started looked all around, primarily Somerville, Cambridge, a little bit in the Boston area. It's a lot of just looking at listings online, touring places, talking to owners, really putting yourself out there. I made a lot of pitch decks for landlords that said no, because it was my first time. It was a lot of no, and it was a lot of me getting excited and being like, I think I found the place, and then falls apart. It was just roadblock after roadblock after roadblock. And so I looked until I first put in this offer for Colette December 2023. So I looked for over a year. I went through 3 different brokers, actually, until I found my third broker, who I knew from childhood. Another thing we should talk about is definitely connections and how a network so helps you, because I would not be where I am without my network and my connections. But needless to say, it was a long search, and I'm really lucky that I'm here, and that the owner and the landlord wanted to take a chance on me.
You mentioned going into debt for this. Is this, again, something that you saved up for a little bit, but that you obviously have to finance with some leverage? What was that decision like? Again,
Friend of a friend was able to connect me with someone who was really great at getting SBA loans. So I was going to get a small business loan. And in order to do that, you need at least 8 to 10% down. So I knew already, like thinking about how much cash I had on hand, like with all my savings, that I could look at a restaurant that was about $400,000. So, with that in mind, I was thinking I was going to get a loan. And then the sellers of this restaurant were great. And they actually offered me seller financing. They just wanted a large deposit up front. And luckily I had a family member who is in the loan business.
Nice.
And so he gave me a loan plus my personal savings that now I just have really small loan payments every month to the previous owners.
That's amazing. So now you're not only running your cocktail business, but also running a
the
restaurant.
Yeah.
So how much of a change has that been? How much extra learning have you had to do for that?
I actually met with like Open Table to like debrief, talk through the platform, whatever. And my Open Table like account manager was like, "Oh, I also used to teach middle school. You can run a restaurant if you taught middle school." Because like teaching, owning a restaurant, and running a restaurant is doing 1,000 small things every single day. And I was like, nice. So that was like my confident boost. Like week 2, I was like, all right, shit, I can do this. So I'd already made peace with that kind of work style. And I learned in my cocktail business how to trust bartenders or other people to run my business when I'm not physically there. And so because I learned that lesson, it was okay for me to have, an assistant manager step in on nights when I need to work my bar events to run the restaurant here. So it's busy. It's a lot of hours, but there's a lot of synergy in the way that the two businesses can help each other out, which is awesome.
That's great. Yeah. So you said you primarily wanted this as a space to teach mixology, right? So are you planning on changing the operations here at all, or?
Yeah, I think French food and French restaurants were seen very differently in 2019 when Colette was started. I think, well, I know because I've seen our sales, that we're selling more cocktails than we are wine. That's also a reflection of the changing market. And I am a very playful and creative person, and I don't like to feel constraints, right? And so I want to change this concept to something that's more fluid, more global, allows for more playfulness on the menu. Even here, we tested a seafood pasta that we put on the menu and no one ordered it. It was priced really well, homemade fresh pasta, fresh seafood. And it's because it didn't have a French name on the menu and it didn't look French to people who were here. So that's a constraint too, guest expectations. Right. So I would love to change the concept to not French, but French Quarter in the fall. So change the decor slightly and change the menu to a place where we can have still French influences, but also Spanish influences, Cajun Creole influences, really add more fresh seafood into the menu and have a really kick-ass cocktail program in the bar.
Of course. How do you feel about Jesse moving here? Do you feel like that's going to become a challenge with all the time that you have to spend here or working?
I think it'll actually be better. He has a great eye for detail, and he's much more like, first you do this and then you do that, which we know now I like live in the chaos. So he's like master organizer. I swear every time he's come up for the past year, he's organized one piece of my apartment. Like 1 week, it was just the spice rack, but all my spices look amazing now. They're all like labeled, organized, whatever. So I think it'll be better because he will bring such a great perspective that I need to my work, and to this work. And then also he can just sit at the bar and we can have dinner together. And also take off a lot of that pressure of like, okay, he's coming to visit. I have to get ready. I have to do extra work so that I can make time for him here. Whereas we can like normalize our time together.
You think you're going to like make him work for you essentially? Or are you going to like force him to do labor? That's what I would do.
There are some plans for that.
To wrap up, I asked Bekah which quote or motto illustrates her approach to entrepreneurship. What does she really try to live by?
I hate nonfiction books too. And so
I hate nonfiction?
Yeah.
Why?
God, because I read for pleasure.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't read to learn. That's like reading a math book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like both. Go ahead.
But the best 2 nonfiction books that I've read, and this all ties in together, the best 2 nonfiction books that I've read that relate directly to my businesses, Tim Ferriss's The 4-Hour Work Week.
Yeah.
And then Unreasonable Hospitality, which is the story of
Shake Shack guy?
No, it's the Shake Shack. He wanted to work for Shake Shack, but he did 11 Madison Park in New York. Forget his name, but anyways, those 2 books really helped shape my perspective of how I want to run a business, and also like how my lifestyle and who I am as a person relates to how I approach every decision that I make. So Tim Ferriss's principle is right, is that you kind of work like a lion. Which means, and if you've ever seen lions hunt, They work really, really hard and they go for the kill. And then they're just like lounging about waiting for the safari to come around. Right. So that's kind of this work hard, play hard, but work very intentionally, play very intentionally, put 110% into whatever you do, but you just divide your time. And then the other piece is from unreasonable hospitality, learning that when you are the boss, you really can do whatever you want, and why follow rules that someone else says you should follow. To give the example of a group that was like visiting New York, and the group was debriefing at dinner, and they're like, wow, we've eaten this, we've eaten this, we've eaten this. Now our like last meal is at 11 Madison Park. What a great experience. Their server is like listening in on all this. And the group says, but we've never had a New York hot dog. That's the one thing we didn't eat. And the server goes to tell the general manager, and the general manager is like, great, I'm gonna go buy a hot dog. And the general manager goes out to the corner, buys like 4 hot dogs, brings it to the kitchen, and is like, juice it up with some sauces, and they serve it to the table. Like, you can do whatever the fuck you want. Yeah. I know a lot of people might think of that as from like a power perspective, but the best part of that is the creativity.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Havers. If you're in the Boston area, please go check out Colette in Cambridge for some truly delicious French food and cocktails. If you enjoyed, please follow us on socials and rate and subscribe on Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts. And remember, you got it all.